Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Today we will be continuing our study on the leopard-like beast of Revelation 13. In our last video we saw that despite being a singular entity, this beast was an amalgamation of a number of different beasts. It had the mouth of a lion, the feet of a bear, the body of a leopard, and so forth. We learned from the book of Daniel that each of these beasts represented a kingdom, and that the different bodily components taken from them was indicative of attributes unique to its respective kingdom. We saw that the mouth of a lion pointed us to the blasphemous speech of Babylon and to the laws this kingdom issued to compel the consciences of men to worship its king. In the feet of a bear, we learned that this beast would mimic the cruel manner in which the Medes and the Persians trampled upon their enemies. And so now that brings us to the kingdom represented by the leopard, the kingdom from which the papacy takes its body, the kingdom that followed the Medo-Persian Empire. In Daniel chapter 8, the overthrowing of the Medes and the Persians is described at length. In verse 3, the prophet sees a ram with two horns. This ram, we are told in verse 20, represented the Medo-Persian kingdom. He then sees a he-goat with a notable horn between its eyes, rushing towards the ram in verse 5 and 6. This he-goat then smites the ram, breaks its horns, overcomes it, and then we are told that this he-goat becomes very great. In verse 21 we read, "The rough he-goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king." So the kingdom that overthrew and succeeded the Medo-Persian Empire was the Grecian kingdom, with Alexander the Great being its first king. So returning to Daniel 7, the leopard then will represent the kingdom of Greece. The bear we saw in our previous video pointed us to the Medes and the Persians. The leopard coming after it would therefore point us to the Grecian kingdom. So the papacy then, the beast of Revelation 13, takes its body from Greece. Now that's very interesting because what are the Greeks known for above all else? 1 Corinthians 1 tells us in verse 22, "For the Jews require a sign, but the Greeks seek after wisdom." And so wisdom was something that the Greeks prided themselves on, and it was something that they sought after. We have the example of Paul when he was in Athens, the capital of Greece. We read of him being met by philosophers and certain Stoics. In Acts chapter 17 and verse 18 we read, "Then certain philosophers of the Epicureans and of the Stoics encountered him. And they took him and brought him unto Areopagus, saying, May we know what this new doctrine whereof thou speakest is?" Verse 21 continues, "For all the Athenians and strangers which were there spent their time in nothing else, but either to tell or to hear some new thing." And so here we have a glimpse into the custom and mind of the Athenians. And it is a trait that would be characteristic of the entire kingdom of Greece, and that was their seeking after knowledge, after philosophy, and after perceived wisdom. Even the beast chosen to depict this kingdom, the leopard, elsewhere in the Bible we see its watchfulness be highlighted, that it observes. Such was the nature of the Greeks in their quest for wisdom, and this is what was adopted by the papacy, the wisdom, the philosophy, the watchful nature of the Greeks. The Bible tells us though that men in their wisdom know not God, but instead worship the things of men, the things of their own hands. This was true of the kingdom of Greece also. The Bible says in Romans chapter 1 and verse 22 that professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God to an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds, and to four-footed beasts, and creeping things. Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness, through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves. For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one to another. Verse 28 continues, "And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, to do those things which are not convenient." As a result, they gave into their sinful desires, living licentious lives, men with men and women with women. Such was the nature of the Greeks, and similar things are seen in the Roman hierarchy. Finally, we were told that the papacy received its power from the dragon. The Bible tells us explicitly that the dragon is a symbol of Satan, and so in its most primary sense, we learn that Satan is the source of its power. But a lot more can be understood from this, and so let's return to Daniel chapter 7. In this chapter, we have seen a delineation of kingdoms, the lion representing Babylon being first, it being succeeded by the bear, a symbol of Medio-Persia, then thirdly, the leopard representing Greece. And we saw that each of these three beasts are mentioned in Revelation 13, attributes being taken from each of them to form the amalgamated beasts we've been studying. But there was one final beast mentioned in the book of Revelation, a fourth, the dragon that gives him his power and seat and great authority. Well, in Daniel chapter 7, there's also one beast left, a fourth, a beast that isn't given a name in these verses, but we read that it was dreadful and terrible, that it was exceedingly strong, and that it had 10 horns, similar to the dragon of Revelation 12 and 13. What we'd come to see is that the dragon that gives the beast its power and great authority, and the fourth beast of Daniel chapter 7 points us to the same entity. In Daniel chapter 7 and verse 23, it reads, "Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces." This kingdom corresponds with the legs of iron mentioned in Daniel 2. We were told there as well that this fourth kingdom shall break its enemies in pieces. And so that raises the question, what was this fourth kingdom? What kingdom succeeded Greece as the next world power? Well, history tells us that the Grecian Empire was followed by the Roman Empire. And the Bible also, after Greece in the Old Testament, the next power we see occupying the throne of the earth is Rome. The New Testament opens with Caesar Augustus, commanding that the entire world be taxed, signifying his worldwide dominance. And so the fourth beast is a symbol of Rome, the fourth kingdom of Bible prophecy. But is there anything that connects the dragon of Revelation 12 and 13 to this fourth beast, other than them both having 10 horns, and both being mentioned in conjunction with the other three beasts? Well, if we turn to Revelation chapter 12, here we would see that the dragon also points us to the Roman Empire. Verse 3 reads, "And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads." In the latter portion of verse 4 it continues, "And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne." Here we again read of the dragon, and we are told that this dragon sought to destroy Jesus when he was born. We know that this child is a reference to Christ, because in verse 5 the child ascended to heaven, sits on the throne of God, and was said to rule all nations, these being clear references to Christ. And so the dragon sought to destroy Jesus at his birth. Now, as we mentioned earlier, in the primary sense, we know that the dragon represents Satan. But Satan did not personally or physically try to destroy Christ himself. He used human instrumentalities. He used an earthly government. And the power that was ruling at the time of Christ's birth, that endowed Herod with the authority to kill all children under the age of 2 years old, would be the Roman Empire. More than this, it was a Roman seal on the tomb of Christ. And during the centuries that followed the birth of the Christian Church, it was the Roman Empire that stood as Satan's chief agent in persecuting the people of God. And so the dragon, while in a primary sense represents Satan, in a secondary sense it also points to the Roman Empire, the government that he used to accomplish his will. So when we read that the dragon gave the papacy its power, seat, and great authority, this is actually a reference to the Roman Empire giving these things. In the year 330 AD, Constantine, the Roman emperor, removed his capital from Rome to Constantinople, leaving the city of Rome vacant for the bishops to occupy. Years later, Justinian, another Roman emperor, issued decrees that endowed the Pope of Rome with power and authority, making him the corrector of heretics and the head of all churches. Thus, over time, the dragon, that is the Roman Empire, through its emperors, empowered the Pope by giving him ecclesiastical and civil authority, with the city of Rome as the seat of this authority. This union of church and state gave rise to the papacy, the system of ecclesiastical government over which the Pope stands as head. The papacy, finally having received its power and seat and great authority from the dragon in the year 538 AD, then used this power to persecute the saints of God, and that marked the beginning of the Dark Ages.